Hi everyone, my name is Joalda Morancy and I am an aerospace systems engineer working on a lunar lander for one of NASA's upcoming Artemis missions. I'm the author of this awesome book, Aliens, Join the Scientists Searching Space for Extraterrestrial Life, and I'm here to answer questions from social media all about extraterrestrial life and our search for aliens in the universe. Question 1. This question is from Amaze Infinity, and they ask, how long can it take us to find aliens? So this is a really good question because honestly, the search really never ends even once we do find aliens. We've been searching for alien life for however long we've been able to send spacecraft up into space. And it's also been a question many people have had, whether there's life like us outside our home Earth and outside our solar system and whatnot. But really, how long it will take will just depend on the precision of our scientific instruments that we send on spacecraft and also just looking in the right place. So we haven't really confirmed yet whether we're alone in our own solar system, though there's a lot of good candidates such as water worlds like Europa and some other moons of Jupiter and whatnot that people are interested in searching. But really, it's whenever we can find it. We don't know exactly where to look or what the best place is, but it'll take however long it takes until we get a good answer of whether we're alone in the universe. And then also, there's a small chance that alien life might find us, even though that is pretty unlikely because we're not super close to any other solar systems right now, but we might be found before we find others, which is super exciting. Question 2. This question is from Vast Lords, and they ask, can you describe how aliens would look like if we meet one? This is a great question that might have an unsatisfying answer, which is we truly don't know what an alien could look like. In a lot of popular media, such as like TV shows and movies, you tend to see aliens that kind of like have like a very huge head and very like bulbous like black orbs for eyes, and it might be like green or gray or some random color that isn't human-like. And to us, this like seems right because it's like, oh, this is like something that doesn't look like us, so it must be alien. But the true answer is that we evolved the way we did because of the conditions here on Earth. And that will be the same for any alien. Who says that they have to have 2 legs or 2 arms and a head and a torso? Who says that they have to kind of like communicate the same way that we do? So the answer is that it really depends on where they came from, and they will develop the way that they need to survive on their planet, which might be completely different from Earth or maybe similar. Question 3. This question is from Squeaky Farts 99, love that. And they ask, could someone explain why the Goldilocks zone is so important in our quest for extraterrestrial life? It might be helpful to first define what the Goldilocks zone is. So basically, the Goldilocks zone is this place within a solar system where it isn't too hot or too cold for liquid water to exist on the surface of that planet. And you might wonder, why is liquid water our baseline? Well, it's because we have lots of liquid water here on Earth, and we know it's needed for our own life to exist. Not only human life, but like animal life and whatnot, plant life, etc. So since this is our only data point for intelligent life to exist, that's kind of the data point we use elsewhere in the solar system to see like, hey, can we like recreate the conditions we needed here on Earth to find alien life elsewhere? So we use the Goldilocks zone because that is based off our single data point here on Earth of water-based life. But there might be a case where life could evolve elsewhere outside of the Goldilocks zone under completely different conditions. For example, a lot of scientists are interested in Titan, which is a moon of Saturn, which has liquid bodies of methane and might potentially host microbial life that is not carbon-based, which would be a prime example for life evolving outside the Goldilocks zone. But it's good to go off our single data point because it's the definition of all life as we know it. But yeah. Question 4. This question is from Rinse the Plates First, and they say, explain it like I'm 5. What is the Fermi Paradox? So I really love the Fermi Paradox because it really kind of exposes this thing that doesn't make sense. So basically in the 1950s, Enrico Fermi, which was a scientist, he kind of asked where is everybody? Because there is like such a high probability of alien life existing in the universe, but we haven't found it yet, that creates a paradox in itself. And it confuses a lot of people because there's at least one thing that we're missing that has prevented us from finding extraterrestrials or extraterrestrials finding us here on Earth. Question 5, following to that, by Amalix34, what's your favorite solution to the Fermi Paradox? This is a really good question because I really like a lot of the potential answers to the Fermi Paradox, such as, oh, what if like aliens are ignoring us? Or what if they're just kind of watching us and they don't want to interfere? So my favorite hypothesis is something called the rare earth hypothesis. And it basically says that the conditions for life to exist on Earth are so rare, and the fact that it happens here within our solar system is very unique. And so it's hard for that to actually be done once again somewhere else in the universe, making life here on Earth pretty precious and unique, which is why I really like it, because it kind of makes you take a step back and understand how unique and how exciting it is to like live on like a planet that can provide you air and food and water and can do lots of things and meet other humans. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting because that means like it might be very difficult to find intelligent beings like us somewhere else, which means we might want to do our best to preserve life, and not only human life, but all life here on Earth as best as we can. Question 6. This question is from McLovinit69. Has anyone considered how risky it might be trying to communicate with aliens before having the technology to defend the planet? So this is an interesting question because it kind of talks about this idea of first contact. Usually when people talk about first contact, they're referencing intelligent species and not really microbial life that might not understand what they're interacting with. Some people have created different types of ways to classify different alien civilizations, and one popular way of doing this is through the Kardashev scale, which is named after Nikolai Kardashev, a Russian scientist. And he has different types of civilizations based off how much energy a society can harness. So for example, a type 1 civilization is a society that can harness all the energy off their home planet. And for reference, I think someone has listed humanity as like a 0.4 civilization, so we're kind of nowhere near reaching type 1 yet. A type 2 civilization would be a society that can harness all the energy from their host star, which might be through using something called a Dyson sphere, which can like siphon energy from a star and like put it elsewhere and whatnot. So that would be type 2. And then type 3 is a civilization that can like kind of harness the energy of their entire galaxy. When you think about those different classifications of an alien civilization, it can kind of help you figure out how you might go about interacting with that civilization. So that's also another way of thinking about risk, just knowing what you're dealing with initially. And then the last thing I want to say there is that part of this question mentioned having the technology to defend the planet. A lot of people assume that if we interact with aliens, that they'll somehow come to try hunt us or like delete us. And that's kind of popular in also like a lot of sci-fi movies where it's like, oh, doomsday, like these random like alien ships arrive and then they're abducting people and cows and whatnot. The real case is that aliens are probably as curious as we are about a separate intelligent species, and that they probably won't try to, say, kill us initially, but they might want to try to learn more about who we are and interacting with us before trying to escalate in somehow. So I like to think that first contact will be hopefully somewhat peaceful, very intriguing, and probably will be breaking news across the entire world. But I'd like to think that we're not going to have to start an alien war here on Earth anytime soon. Yeah. Question 7. This next question is from C. McGortz, and they ask, if humans settle on another planet, are their kids and grandkids considered aliens? This is a really great question because it kind of toys with our definition of what an alien is. Is it something that's just not born on Earth, or is it like a species that was just like completely different, that was born elsewhere, evolved elsewhere? For some people, they would say yes, in the fact that, say we have like a human mission to Mars and we start settling there and there's people that like live there and then they have children there and whatnot. At some point, those children might evolve in ways that they can survive better on Mars than they could on Earth. because, for example, Mars has lower gravity, thinner atmosphere, stuff like that that can affect the way that our biology works. And so at some point, a human born on Mars might look pretty different than a human born on Earth, and it might be hard for a human born on Mars to actually go back to Earth and like survive that kind of environment because they're just not used to like something like stronger gravity or breathing in air from like a thick atmosphere and whatnot. So some people might say, yes, they would be considered aliens. Others might say no, because even though they were born elsewhere, at the end of the day, their original species was from Earth, and people might consider aliens as species that were evolved completely elsewhere. So it really like depends on like how you want to view it. At the end of the day, like I don't think it like really matters too much, because it depends on what your intent is with the question. Like, do you want to treat this person differently because of like where else they were born or whatnot? Either way, it would be really cool to see how we like kind of combat that in the future once we see more humans going elsewhere in the solar system and living elsewhere. Those are all our questions for today. I had a really fun time answering various types of what aliens could look like and how long it'll take to find them and how we deal with first contact. Honestly, alien life and searching for it is going to be something we'll do for the rest of our lifetime as humans, because the search really never stops. As we find more evidence that supports whether we're alone or not alone, people will definitely have more questions. What I'd like to think is that somewhere across the Milky Way, there is another alien civilization trying to figure out whether they're alone, and hopefully one day the stars will align and our worlds will collide. Thank you for watching.